Welcome to Your Brain Express podcast. I'm your host, CJ Aline.
And I'm Carl Aline.
And together, we will take you on a journey to where entrepreneurship meets culture and cool.
So get ready to elevate and expand your entrepreneurial spirit as we explore the dynamic and ever-changing landscape of the business world.
So, sit back, relax, and join us as we bring to you the ultimate vibe and help you experience your brand like never before. Let's get it. Woo!
All right, we're hanging out with the amazing Dr. Munira Zahabi. How's it going?
It's going. How are you, Carl? It's been a minute before we met up again, but it's really good to see you.
Right. It's great to see you, my friend. Well, hey, we're going to get right into it. I know your time is short. So listen, can you tell our audience about you and what you do?
So, Carl, I'm known as a niche navigator. I live in Chicagoland, and so I work with people who are trying to figure out what their niche is, what they should do in life, or what's the next step in their life. And then those of them who have already established a niche and are trying to figure out where their ideal client is exactly, I help them market using podguesting strategies. So, marketing is a beast, if you will. And a lot of people get really, really intimidated by that.
Right. That is so true. And it's easy for people to get overwhelmed. So you're talking about podguesting, right? Podguesting. And let me ask you a question, like what are the key differences between like hosting a podcast, like I'm doing right now, and also appearing as a guest in terms of creating like the evergreen content?
So it's almost the same, but it's not. Most people out there think, I'm just going to have a podcast. But what are you going to do with your podcast, right? So in case you want to start your podcast, I'm not here to discourage anybody. But if you have a message, why don't you get on somebody else's? There are over 2 million podcasts in the world. They are in every language. And so somebody is looking for you and somebody is looking for you as a guest. So why are you not taking advantage of appearing on there? See, podcast, if you start your own podcast, the one thing is you have to grow your audience, and that's all a problem because, again, that's part of marketing. If you go on as a guest, somebody already has their audience established, and you just go in and talk to them. So that's a key difference. Evergreen content, both people are going to do it, podcast guests and podcast hosts, but you want new perspectives in your podcast if you're a podcaster. Now, some people do both. I am a podcaster too, and my podcast is called Munira's Musings. So I do podcasts, but I also appear on as a podcast. So it's just filling my reach and reaching more people. Evergreen content, once you put it on the web, it's there forever. You can't, even if you delete it, somebody's going to find it. So, but what is it that you do with evergreen content also? That's another question.
Right. And wow, Munira, this is such a perfect timing to talk about this because I've had clients and have clients and know of people who they're great at what they do. They're great at their craft, but it's hard to get out there. And then they feel like for me, I'm encouraging people to do short form videos and just get on video in general. And I help people to be confident. But the idea of coming on as a guest, you already know your information. You may get some questions, you may not. All you have to do is show up. That's How cool is that?
Yeah, because the
So
marketing is done. Yeah, marketing is done for you. Everybody knows what this guy is going to do, the podcast host is going to do. It is so amazing to show up and look good, smile a lot, and be authentic, right?
right. And it's so simple, but what you do is so intricate and so important. I'm sorry, important's the right word for people, because hello, I'm not sure if you heard what we just said. It's easier for you to get out there as far as getting in front of an audience, and not just your audience, other people's audiences.
Yes.
So it's brilliant. I love it.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. So what would your definition of podcasting be?
So, podcasting is a fantastic opportunity to share your expertise, inspire others, and connect with a wider audience through podcast appearances. It's stepping out into the spotlight of a podcast host. And when you have a chance to share your knowledge, your experience, and your insight with other people's audiences, you are making a real impact, sparking new ideas, and motivating people to take action and achieve their goals.
I love that. And it's interesting, I'm glad you said it. Like we're talking about it, but I wanted to hear your side of things, because you mentioned before you get a fresh perspective. And I love that, because getting a fresh perspective from individuals, that means you get more wisdom. It's good to be savvy with the stuff, but savvy and wisdom are two different things. So if I can get a perspective from you and I have my own perspective, guess what? And then and the audience hears it, everyone else is enlightened. Everyone's enlightened, actually. So it's great to hear your definition.
Right. But, there's some things, right. Sorry about that. But so many times we hear things in life that we never pay attention to. But there's one listener that comes across your dashboard or your podcast, and he says it in such a way. It's the same thing you've heard several times, but the way he says it is so intriguing. It's so enlightening that I'm going to take action now. This guy he's talking to me, right? So that's what happens to people.
I love it. I kind of think about the analogy. My wife tells me something, right? You know where I'm going with this, right? And then my best friend tells me the same thing. And my wife said it to me like 3 times. And I'm like, yeah, honey. And then he tells me, I'm like, hey, babe, do you understand? Guess what I learned today? Did you hear this? And she's like, all she could do is give me the eye.
I've been telling you this for years.
For years, exactly. So I love it. It's just that cycle, it's just that opportunity to learn, and just into that not learning curve, but you get that opportunity to get more insight faster at a more rapid rate. So I love it. Now, question for you. Why is it important for podcasts to deliver content that continues to resonate with listeners?
Because if you're a podcast host, how much content can you create? That's one thing. And you always want to bring other people on so that you get a new, fresh perspective. That's one thing. Now you're talking about evergreen content. What is it this person is going to, like we said, right? What is this person going to say that's going to allow my listeners, or, in podcasting world, it's all about numbers. How many people are listening? How many people have downloaded? And what are they looking for? There are some podcasts that are downloading about 1 million, for each video they listen to, it's 1 million downloads. So it's not only about numbers, but podcasters also have to worry about that. Have they lost listeners? Are they gaining more listeners? Because there's monetary gain somewhere in there, right? But evergreen content is somebody says something, you take that, transcribe it, create a blog about it, send it to the world. Now you've doubled it, right? And even my coaches have always said that if you are saying something and you tell it to somebody, now you've doubled your audience. and that person tells somebody else. And so it's the power of twos, right? Multiply, multiply, multiplication. And it's the law of multiplication. So it will grow, but it's how you show up. Now, evergreen content, you can make shorts. You can take it and put it on TikTok and then direct them towards your podcast. You can put it in a world where, in the podcast world where you can find it. There are other programs out there who will change the language. So if you are a Hispanic speaker, you can change this, dub it in another language, and it'll go to those listeners too, because you don't know who you're impacting and how you will impact this person. So evergreen content means that you're going to just live forever. And one thing is that, I always think about this. I don't have any voice recording of my mother. My mother died when I was 12. I have not, she's been gone for a long time. But now I'm thinking, I wish I had her recording. So for me, my legacy is I can leave a lot of podcasts out there, leave my voice out there, so my great-grandchildren can even listen. Oh, you know what? My grandma was an entrepreneur and she did this for us. She left us this legacy. So you're also building your legacy.
Wow, I've never heard anyone say that. So you're building your legacy. You can build a legacy with podcasting. Wow. I mean, I think about, I could repurpose this. Is the whole idea of Evergreen. I mean, Evergreen has stood the test of time. Let's just admit that. So the fact that you're saying that, I love it, because people can continue to do it. But leaving a legacy, that is a powerful thing to think about when it comes to podcasting. So I love that, Munira. Wow. Good stuff. Well, we got to have you back. We definitely need to have you back. We got to have you back. We can't just this, you know what? We need to have a part 2 to this. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Let's do it. So
we should.
Consider it done. So Munira, where can people find you at? Like there are people who I know who talked about having podcasts and starting podcasts and podguesting. Where can they go to if they want to learn more about this? Where can they find you online?
Before I answer that question, let me just tell you that podguesting is a new term out there because people are discovering that it is very powerful, right? So it may or may not come up on searches, but I see now Google is now showing up with a lot of searches. So just saying that out there. For me, I am called the niche navigator. So anybody who puts in the niche navigator can find me. And I have a website by the same name, thenichenavigator.com. And if you just hit the contact me page, I will give you 30 minutes of my time if you book up an appointment, and we'll figure out what is the strategy for your business.
You guys hear that? 30 minutes, contact Munira. Free. Hello. Awesome. And also, real quick question for you to follow up on the last thing you mentioned before your contact information. Are there any other terms that are out there besides a podguesting, just in case there's any confusion for people you know of?
People talk about guests.
Guests.
Yeah, so people talk about guests and just those kind of things, but more so it's podcasting now. That's, I think, is going to be a coined word, and I like to think I coined it, but who knows? You know, somebody out there who's maybe another genius out there.
Well, hey, you got from Munira. You all will hear more from Munira. Well, Dr. Munira, thank you so much for being with us. There you have it.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode.
And if you haven't already, please be so kind and give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we'll see you soon. Peace.